Excuse me. Messed up. To what's been told. No. Exception nature. At the same time, cannot be that, but is that as value? Isn't a demonstration of the same thing? The science of a human volume science is being and having been abridged. So I'm not a doctor. There are other people that are not doctors. That are not. But have been prevented, for example, since founding of each modern country, individually grouped in, together too. It is evidence how hyper evidential how the value of how they were grouped as the distinct colonies, whether they're fighting with each other too or liked each other or not. They were grouped a whole bunch of ways before our founders were born here and there with those crazy laws against everyone. Not just because they agreed about it, or democracy. See, democracy in the Republic has been told through and entertained with and as all locations, fact treatments, abridged from the youngest stages. For example, so with I forgot the name of the sitcom. It had a car called the General Lee, and it had a Confederate flag on it. And there were plenty of suburban kids from suburbs who watched the time. Never anyone tell them between for example, all bunches everyone that are above will cause age progressions, acts in natures, acts like predicate acts. Nature, I'm not a lawyer, not police form, not criminal, not a judge. Native Americans say that we must read each other's dreams. There is only increasing value in that. Now, we need to syntactically agree and observe what really not just what really is making us not agree and or independent. In other words, exploiting that at other locations with other natures of things. Note where subject treatments appear to be different, but they are not. And where the relevance of them are with fact treatments and as fact treatment nature, as criminal insidiousness nature, of positive treatments, negative treatments, and identity treatments simultaneously. Hypertextually too is ground. Hypertextually as that identity, the hyper simultaneous is, that is to define that which is actually manifest always at once. Present, omnipresent, and hyperpresent is distinct. This is the identity that all extremes and that all things are in demonstration of it. This how the simultaneously also comes with a body greater than itself, that it is a semi-nature relationship to itself. But where and how we have to make those words and or ignore it and or have to be sensed, for example, simultaneously by people around everyone who laws sustained, not just against Native Americans, because they're still accepting, because they already replaced the Native Americans. Everyone else natured out of the ground locations for effectively for nature to demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts and natures at all locations, areas and states. Vaccines. In other words, so the groups of whites, of black peoples and white survivors each the notes of music. They share an identity, individually grouped and together as all things. Because one identity of perfect value progression as the identity of the hyposimultaneous, that which is all parts of space existence simultaneously and increasingly no. So that is generation everywhere at once. Is what counts with sort of before time and physics. The identity slash existence, extent, possession of all parts of space slash as itself, as its hyper additional self that became and or was. And this is what nature actually, nature's nature, and the value of that is what is manifest, where and how we have an extent of that which is every place at once that we have to observe. Just like if you put a transverse section of some cells, of a cucumber, of a tomato, of some. So they're translucent. So excuse me. So you could look at them from a microscope. And your teacher will tell you to look at how the chloroplast is manifest distinctly as the cell body, and is manifest distinctly as the cell wall /S, and distinctly as the cell nucleus, and how they share. There are three distinct identities of sequence nature and of simultaneous nature / simultaneous nature. And there are proofs that the ancients earlier then was set up to be. Theological exception. The truth of what is practical. Before America's founders were even born, a breaching method had slavery entrenched North and South colonies sickly distinct before their parents were even born. And everyone was sickly distinctly. And it was measured and was maintained, and how sickly non-distinctly. How nature itself was demonstrating that. That was employed by a breaching method effectively, without anyone realizing, to be sensed and hurt anyone who would use the short words and revelations presented by nature's nature and the value of that. Only again, regarding the extent, which is the identity of that which is places that once, as we cannot be, but as it. But now, as human systems, this one species too long has been systems tactical ulterior from age, which is a demonstration of what really causes positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures, evolutions, fruits, and gifts. It means out of nowhere, including especially differentially, where we are. Quality is fact treatment nature. Fact treatment nature, quality aspects, natures. So we have to learn phrases like criminal seriousness, criminal enterprise, and hypercriminal enterprise, and hypercriminal insidiousness, because we know that breaching method employed. Private criminal enterprises, forced self-valued syntactically too, and that would be manifest and is manifest at other locations. As systems tactical ulterior per how its system is manifest at all locations. For example, bound 3 ways and bound 5 ways simultaneously. Distinctly not concerning how individual nature and being nature. Distinctly, non-distinctly, and with the slash between it. And as to that which is nature's nature. In other words, that which is actually capable of being used functionally to answer our questions. For example, it per how it is, one of the things it is constantly, with all exceptions and demonstrations of the same thing, where it has possession over our fact treatment nature. In other words, it wants and needs us to use words like value and nature to explain and understand and to perceive properly why we and how we have the colors the way they are, black pupils, whites of eyes, why and how it is easy, just like it is easy to child abuse a kid, especially if you have forced control over them. And kind of trick ways to, and you have everyone with a quality of fact-keeping nature forced at all locations. This forced overt consequences, transnational gangs, interstate gangs, and, all kinds of it through of what is actually that which is evidential is the shorts of logic because of where and how interbranch locations are really originally instilled. Are there a part of this manifest where people A through Z have opinions and convictions that leave out and blame on other things, others themselves, where and how really at age of fact-keeping nature, there are debates manifest that simultaneously are inherent active and increasingly with demonstrations of those debates being and having been employed, for example, to maintain defenses of uses of the value of what debate is as value, syntactically, therefore, and legally and other simultaneously, as arrays of fact-keeping nature styles that can't defend their positive and negative treatments and their identity treatments and afford short words to demonstrate the countless revelations surging from how the Native Americans, the colonists, and ourselves, and the names of the other lands involved, how everyone distinctly, even it's recorded as actually recorded, sickly and forced to self-value that because there were where and how a lot of things are looked over here and there and everywhere because of naive time treatments, where and how the subject treatments have been employed. And the part of noting about how this was sustained against Native American sickly and how everyone was this age the statute want to use short words to speak about the revelations using the things that are hyper evidentially true always, not denying the slightest finite detail, not denying them having or valued by others, deny, because there was a nature of this is the nature of theater, criminal insidiousness that we have to counter, and hyper criminal insidiousness rather is that which we have to counter syntactically, and it's from a source that came from semi-ancient times. For example, it evidentially proves slavery, and since before cars, before our founders were even born, before their parents were even born, that slavery system, that crazy witch trial system, that crazy laws about what anyone could say at all locations, because because the prison comes with torture, all the arrays of bad things that people fear, so they trust other people to counter them, and so they value the subjects and the admission of the reality. But say everyone has everyone else thinking for themselves. Everyone has faith in other people's integrity based on their occupations and things like that, per readings of statutes, per precedents left, criminally foreign influence, simultaneously delusion, tactically delusions wrought just for an identity. And so we can simultaneously bring the resources for, there has to be a plan that just works with all the countries at once. And it can't leave out economics, but it can't, and it can't leave out how truth about economics, A, therefore B, treatments, left and leave out and are still forced to leave out the roles of economic syntactical treatments, where and how the course of Black peoples and the whites of eyes was tactically abridged for that. For not just for the causes of it to be blamed on other things other than ourselves. Not just for the uses of that. Not everyone was kept not discerning, because it knew that would be used. It was being used. But other people just wanted to go about positive, negative name treatments, instances, roles, treatments. Not having to be criminally foreign influence forced. And that's what they're doing with each age of fact human nature. Before suburban kids, back in the 70s, 80s, when they watched the sitcoms, for example, and people couldn't get up and turn the channel. I mean, you could get up and turn the channel. You have to get up and turn the channel, for example. In other words, the things change with the time, but some things never change. But some of those things that never change about how they present things that are artistic and that are news and or as reported news and or as reported science. See, the sciences share an identity box things. It teaches things, reveals. There are proofs that it is more probable and it's more practical to theorize that, or to convict, that, let alone to convict, that the ancients had revealed and valued how they grounded and not institutionalized as people think the identity that wrestling, martial arts, and that boxing share, and functionally relative to defense. Defense is necessary for the syntactical abridgments of that syntactically manifest, where and how nature gives each individual the means to discern how the value of the order of the finite details are being and have been left out. The value of those details are being and have been left out, where the only increasing value of how and why, really, not just for physical reasons, there are Black pupils and whites of eyes manifest. No, as the black sky and white stars. And no opposite of with black in the center in physics, in the physics here, by this natural course. And because it comes with and as the only in other words, there are stem that there are all these bad things. No, there are all these proofs that no one could deny without demonstrating that they simultaneously self-value, criminally foreign influence, fact, treatment, nature, qualities, aspects in nature as criminal insidiousness. So our founders left us to discern what the founders of other countries left everyone to discern too. But they did not have me to explain to have to us that which had already been entrusted, had already either distinct arrays of rules. Everything, but in other words, they designed the suburbs to cause negative value nature progressions, acts and natures. Only counters to it if people would roles criminal insidiousness natures positive treatments means nature and criminal insidiousness positive method of slavery against their founders too in together. Our real founder /S had to, and it's /S founder simultaneously, not distinctly and simultaneously relevant to that right and left share distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. For example, is in demonstration of itself, not just simultaneous, but how simultaneous, hyper-simultaneous too. This is the only increase in value. What logic gates treatments, like there are logic gates relevant to means to exploit how a circuit is an identity of value / value progression, and how identities could be. And don't forget, when you denature nature and you force people as a to entertain it, syntactically, rely upon only allow roles with self-value and criminal natures of means to cause positive value nature progressions. See, nature, it knew, the breaching method knew, would keep demonstrating that. And it would be the real worst causes and roles with uses of it by the breaching method. That is what the countries individually grouped it together were and are trying to counter. But this breaching method knew they would not be able to counter criminal insidious natures of treatments. At each age of fact, treatment nature, sickly distinctly too. And so they would have to counter them wrong, ignore it, delay response to it, ignore it, but not ignore it, contemplate it. Or say something and try to address it, but they also keep it layered where it appears to be other people's motivations and real motivations, but used to cloak what really was and is involved with it. So, for example, it knew that there would be all kinds of needs for all kinds of investigations, all kinds of investigators, all kinds of needs for courts to step in and help solve things, all kinds of needs for political voices too, because it knew that nature, how nature has us individuals grouped and together, ages, areas, sexes. It knew that how functional it is, how the mind has means to discern the distinction between, we have how it is functional, that which is hyper invisible but still discerned, we know. For example, where and how people speak with passions and emotions regarding how and why. All the examples and evidence manifest in demonstration of worse than torture having been and being sustained against Americans, still sickly distinctly, by that breaching method, which employed all natural differences and tactical value per system has why and how we need value discerned. For example, because of the equality between nature and nature's nature, increasing value of that, where nature can be discerned with it as, in other words, that is claimed that we as such as natural disasters, to things that lead up to wars, let alone wars. See, they can't speak because they have other replacements to keep them incapable of speaking properly for what led up to revolution /S. See, all leaders, no matter who they are, and they're going to be differentially, but differentially increasingly, simultaneously victims and predators enforced to pretend otherwise, using the styles of logic and the value usage, identity uses of the logic gates, not just relevant to computers. Before America was even founded, before our founders were even born, and know how they had to counter extort the other founders. That is increasingly valuable because it shows the paranoia that had been employed by the hyper-archetypal predicate acts delivery system method. Therefore, I am not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal. Since it is also hyper-evidential that the lawyers were involved with arrays in the furtherance of the same, conclusion /S, and then needs to hide that from themselves and everyone else, and increasingly self-valuing that having been, because they still have to do that increasingly, regardless if people like each other or not, at the locations they go to work, at the locations they go to school, at the locations they live, every one of them, at the parks, relative to the other ground distinctions and differences. This is a method that took complete possession, not just of Native American education, which they replaced with, lies, truths used as lies, simultaneously, tactically, criminally, foreign influence delusions, maintain self-value, engineered that way. This is a between all locations. So this knew that the identities of the law would increasingly need to self-value, take some, like, in other words, action on play. So we have to understand Marbury versus Madison. So I was taught Marbury versus Madison means real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. Now, all appearances of real justice have not been satisfied regarding defenses of the identities of James Madison and of George Washington, for example, sickly distinctly, but they have not been defended. Sickly distinctly, the Constitution unabridged has not been liberated. The revolution was lost. And wars, people make what they call opinions. People make statements regarding wars that offense, that they can't go back and afford, proper critical examination of their narratives towards motives too. This effectively employed at the locations where law is defended formally and informally to collusions with itself, not specifically to have self-value where everyone's differentially criminally foreign influenced. They don't want to be criminally foreign influenced. But if they try to say anything about it, they're attached to fake words, fake other things, other collusions, intercities, even interstates if they travel interstates. And this is other ways observably internationally in ways that one there are revolutions that come from countries took part in things like that. How there's a subject treatment divided from all the, from the method itself, divided from where and how it was employed sickly distinctly by the breaching method. Everyone rolls. When you see New York City and there are people stacking there, that's why it's an increasingly relevant value to understand, let alone people stacking there. Where it is the sickly distinctly against people, because the method that, in other words, so it's increasingly valuable to observe what is actually before cars. They designed the suburbs tactically in nature. They made everyone say, okay, whatever to themselves. But it's not what our founders, the Constitution unabridged, knows that no one cares about the of their income because they don't have at the legal. See, we learn things from the physics of the law. We learn things from the nature of the law. And we learn things from the identities of the law. Distinctly, not distinctly, and simultaneously, and hyper simultaneously, relative to where and to how functionally it is that the same identity as the value of the means to discern and have people understand. You're speaking about the simultaneous. That is not just the individual, not just the group, and it's not just the species body. Inside the species is body system, body slash S, and slash S plural, body singular slash singular, and the slash is where hypergeneration is taking place, and we know it took place, and we know to an extent it has to come. These three identities of generation are bound. You're gathered round it not just as earth, as space slash existence, but as its a special difference. See, too long forced away from here, forced space nature transfer, where the identity that is actually the identity hyper simultaneous. That is actually its identity of relationship to itself, always true, not leaving out the smallest finite detail. In other words, it will only stay positive on all parts of space slash existence to an extent simultaneously at once, hyper simultaneously, and increasingly. But simultaneously, too, it is temporary, especially positive idea of relationship to Earth and to that, to our right and to our left, not distinctly, and to show us too how hyper simultaneously. And so we have to address that which enforces time treatments that are at all formal locations and informal locations in collusion. It is recorded how the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and insidiousness of people A through Z are kept shown needing to hide how they've been using the ground locations by what most furthers overt criminal enterprises. Most furthered and furthers the private ones, originally and still not just self-valued, not just uses of that towards the corruptions and the statistical manifestations with that, uses of that, reactions, treatments of it, used by the breaching method to measure and maintain its roles with everything left out. Here, there, individually grouped and together. As you see, suits and ties counters to it. Using passions and emotions, leaving out the value of that which is actually simultaneously recorded. Leaving out the only increasing value of how we have black pupils and white eyes. The revelations that come from this were relevant to where the sciences share an identity, how they got away with hiding it so long. So we have to make a distinction between who physical health doctors are, because these are people, for example, and we're how it's too late, where it's actually too late. and then the courts and or the police firms have to get involved. See, we can't counter that because they have the still roles with it. Whole methods, for example, offensively. I forgot the thing and dropped my pick at the same time. That's why you always have another one right there. We have to get people from every country involved with it. And this is where our video we can start making a video together. And we need to get actors. One of the things we could do to avoid proper care for the victims of the worst positions. That's relevant to that less entrenched, more fighting, more fighting the smallest detail of any group and therefore system, and as the republic itself, and as its goals with the campus's system. The campus Marsyas is more probably and more practically, having been revealed by ancients, now can't discern how to assess the means of the species body. Answers syntactically relevant to what's really going to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, natures, and means out of nowhere. This is regarding where really and how we are syntactically manifest, as value manifest. So no one ever addressed the identity theft / fraud slanders aspects and revelations per people too, recorded. Increasingly, the sciences individually grouped together needed to self-value how the identity of the sciences share. It demonstrates itself manifest when we make subject treatments. So they blame on racism or prejudice. The breaching method measured and maintains distinctly from our own for other motivations, natures, needs, interests, but also for its own. Juxtaposed with that, which needs those for excuses, apparent motivations, truths that people could use for lies, people that don't realize it mixed with people that do, and relevant to where and to how what we all agree upon gets denied. See, they just have people chime in. You should see the only time people respond to things when trying to prevent people from getting a response. When there are a whole bunch of ways to everyone trying to catch everyone else. Vaccine.